Welcome back to the Rags to Races podcast. I'm your host, Jake. Just wanted to say sorry it's been a little while since I've recorded and dropped anything out for you to listen to. A couple busy work weeks, plus I didn't think to bank up any episodes for the show. So after having a couple of interviews fall through and finally getting a hold of some free time, was able to record a few podcasts. So I do have a couple coming up here, and I already have a couple more interviews scheduled for later next week. So enjoy. Here we are, and I'm going to be introducing our co-host Brooks today. So enjoy the show. All right. Hello again, and welcome back to the Rags to Races podcast. I'm your host, Jake, and as promised, I'm here with my co-host, Brooks. Brooks, say hello.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Brooks.
Well, I'm a big fan of podcasting. I've been doing it for a while now, for a couple of years. I've a couple of podcasts under my belt, but they're now defunct and not making new episodes anymore. And on top of that, I drive for a living. I've been driving for a living since 1999. And as a person that drives for a living for all these years, yes, racing has been something that I've always wanted to do, but maybe not something that has been in my realm of interest as far as the way you're interested in it. I've definitely thought about it a lot, but never really done more than just thought about it and fantasized about it and had this dream, like maybe one day I can race, and I've definitely raced people on the road before, but they didn't really know that I was racing them, so I don't think it really counts.
No, that doesn't probably count so much, but so you're somebody who has you're kind of my target audience here, someone who's never really done it. Have you ever had any idea on how to get involved or anything like that before?
No, I've just always had the idea that it was something that wasn't obtainable to the average person. That the average person, it's just something that other people did.
Fair enough. That's good to know. So, what area of racing would most interest you?
I'd have to say driving fast.
Alrighty. So have you ever gone to, what is there any specific type of races you've ever gone to and seen in person?
Oh yeah, I'm originally from Michigan, and there was an amateur course, the Flat Rock Speedway, back in a suburb of Detroit called Flat Rock. Mm-hmm. And these were guys that you'd see around town and stuff. These were all locals. Working on cars, bringing them up there, racing them. Not really sure what kind of race you would classify it as, but it was a round track. It appeared to look like a NASCAR type track.
Gotcha.
But these were average cars on there. They didn't look like NASCAR.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been around some circle track stuff before. That's good to know, because that's an area I do plan on covering in the future. The biggest reason I brought Brooks in is, kind of like he said, he drives for a living, but he's never really been involved in motorsports before. And like he said, he's not sure how to do it. And, well, Brooks, while you're on this journey with me here, I'm going to be taking you out. You're going to get behind the wheel here a couple times. And I want to get your opinions on stuff, your thoughts on stuff. And when I do have guests on and when I'm talking, I love for you to, if I get too technical or I'm explaining, talking about something and you don't understand it, by all means, please butt in, stop me, tell me to break it down and simplify it, because I kind of want you to help me portray the message best to anybody and everybody that could be listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to be the voice of the person. Well, it's not going to be too difficult because I'm the person that doesn't really know a lot about this. So yeah, whenever I have a question, I won't hesitate to ask.
Great. So it's a pleasure to have you here. Anything you want to talk about while I got you here?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me and having me on the show. I don't know, man. How does one just how did you start getting involved in racing, and has it always been an interest for you?
Well, it's always been an interest for me, that's for sure. The big thing always was, for me, I always thought it had to be a rich man's game. You know, you had to have boatloads of money to even think about getting involved at the grassroots level. And as I got older, I found out that's not the case. In fact, there are things you can do that are, you know, where you're surrounded by motorsport, and it doesn't really even cost you much anything, if at all. And I want to kind of bring that out to people. I started racing myself back in 2001, I believe it was. 2000 or 2001. It would have been 2001. I came home from leave. I had gone to Kosovo and had some money saved up, and I bought myself a little sports car here in the States, and ran into a high school friend, and she was doing something called autocross. And I kind of started to explain it to you a little off the air, but on the air, basically what it is you go to a big open parking lot or an airstrip. They set up street cones to make gates and slaloms and real hard corners, and you race the clock. You're not racing wheel to wheel. It's more or less, it's all comes down to driver ability and what you can do behind the wheel and how you can control your car. And it is one of the biggest adrenaline rushes you'll ever experience in your life. And from that day forward, I was just bit by that bug, and I didn't look back. And I've always kind of looked for ways to get more involved, even with like wheel-to-wheel racing and other forms of motorsport and racing, and what I can do. Even when I was, you know, dirt broke and jobless, you know, what could I do to be around it and be a part of it?
It's interesting that you say you were always of the opinion that it took boatloads of money. Because I have something similar where I was always under the opinion that you had to be a gearhead, that you had to be able to tweak cars and wrench on cars and be able to soup them up and do things to them. Is that the case? Are the drivers typically gearheads?
Well, I mean, a lot of us, that is, you know, one of our hobbies. It may not be your direct job. It doesn't even have to be your job. And in fact, you need to know how to put windshield washer fluid in your car. If you really want to learn to drive technically or do any kind of motorsport stuff, you can do it. You don't need to be able to have a degree in automotive engineering, anything like that, or go to any tech schools. You can do it yourself, even just as long as you know how to drive a car. You can always there are ways you can get out there and do it.
Sure. So is it something, I mean, I've probably driven over 3 million miles in my life. You know, I look at driving as something that I'm really good at. Some people might disagree, but so do you think somebody like me that's very familiar with a car, driven literally hundreds of different cars and different trucks and all types of different vehicles and different sizes and comfortable in all of them, is this something that you think could be approachable to somebody like me?
Absolutely. And performance driving is a lot different from driving on the street. When you're on the street, you're taught to be a defensive driver, to really start, you know, like your acceleration nice and gentle, your braking very, very early. It's a little different. You're taught to, when you're performance driving, you're driving more offensively, and you're really waiting to the last possible second to hit the brakes. You're turning in. Now, fluidity and smoothness of how you control the vehicle is definitely important. It will actually help you be faster. And in autocross, actually, like we were talking about, there's a saying, you go slow to go fast. So the more slow and controlled you get, the faster you will get over time. And it is definitely something you would have no problem learning in probably a short amount of time.
Now, when somebody makes that transition and tries to become a performance driver, what are a lot of mistakes that people make in the early stages?
You know, a lot of people I can't speak for, but I can definitely give you my own mistakes that I've made over the years. One of the first ones I noticed and had pointed out to me was that I really was only looking about 10 feet in front of the car. I wasn't looking farther ahead. I was watching for that next gate that I had to go through, the next set of cones I had to go through, the next slalom, and each individual cone in the slalom, and I'm not looking further down the road. And that's one of the most important things you can do, and will help you get faster. Just something looking 100 feet down. And what people don't necessarily understand right away is, if you're looking somewhere, your body will send the car in that direction. And once I started to learn to look not at the gate I'm coming up on, not at the one after that, but the one after that, once I started doing that, my times decreased exponentially, and I got a lot faster in a real big hurry.
So you're saying kind of like keeping the third gate in your main vision and maybe keeping the next gate in your peripheral.
Exactly. The first two are always in your peripheral, and the third one is the one you're watching for. So you're constantly looking far enough ahead that even if you do start to make a mistake, your body will react and adjust accordingly. And it becomes, over time, it really just becomes second nature. You don't even notice you're doing it anymore. I even catch myself nowadays. I don't watch the car in front of me when I'm in traffic. The performance driving aspect, a lot of it does transfer over to driving on the street, and I've noticed myself become a lot safer driver on the street because of what I've learned autocrossing and doing track days and such.
You mentioned the cones and the gates and things, so obviously that's a good place to start for somebody that's just learning.
Mm-hmm.
But how long does it take somebody of doing the cones and the gates and things to move on to actually racing other cars?
Well, that comes down to how big is your pocketbook and how far do you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to jump into wheel-to-wheel racing, there are ways to do it, and definitely by all means go for it. But as a good stepping stone for someone who's never done any performance driving, who can't afford the several $1,000s to go to a performance driving school, I think autocross is the perfect stepping stone for anyone who wants to make that jump into performance driving. Not to mention the value of it. A typical race day for autocross could cost anywhere between, I'd say, $30 and $60. And that's rough. It's been a few years since I've been autocrossing. It might be a little different, and depending on what club you go to, there are multiple different clubs that do it almost every weekend all across the country. But the low cost of it, the low wear and tear on your vehicle, the fact that it's basically open to just about anybody. If you've got a driver's license and a vehicle, come out and give it a try.
So these autocross, this is all time trials?
Kind of. Time trials are a little bit different. They're actually on a full course, mm-hmm. where you're running multiple laps over and over again, just trying to get that fast lap time. You've got other cars you've got to contend with that are doing the same thing as you, so you've got to find a place where both of you are happy. Neither of you are going to lose time, but if you're going faster than the guy in front of you, you've got to get around him. So there still is that element of danger, and the speed level is a lot higher doing a time trial than there is an autocross. When you do an autocross, they set up the course, and it's literally one lap. They don't usually encirculate and you go back. The start line is at a different place than the finish line. So you go through the course, you cross the finish line, you stop, and you get back in line to do it again. And it's usually only, most places are around 60 seconds, and depending on the complexity of the course and the amount of area they have to set up, it's usually between like 40 and 60 seconds at a time you're running. But don't let that fool you. Those 40 to 60 seconds are going to be the busiest 40 to 60
Sure.
seconds of your life. And once you get going, the adrenaline starts pumping. I know when I finished my first pass on an autocross course, I stopped and took my hands off the steering wheel, and they were shivering like I had the DTs. I had so much adrenaline pumping through my system, and I had the permagrin the rest of the day just from that one pass.
Nice.
It's very addictive, and some people, when they start, they'll try autocross and they fall in love with it. There's a whole semi-pro series devoted just to autocross. There's a national tour. There are national level events. There's all kinds of stuff you can do just in autocross. A lot of people choose just to stay there. Other people do use that as a stepping stone to get you more familiar with performance driving, and will in turn help you when you do make that step to track racing and wheel-to-wheel racing. For instance, my second track day I ever did, which is where you go to a track, you're not racing, but you're driving on a track, you're at high speed, there's multiple cars on the track. in order to pass somebody, they have to acknowledge that you're there and point which side of the car they want you to pass on. And when you first start out doing that as well, it's very limited passing areas, mostly just the straightaways. You can't pass anywhere near a corner at all. You have to be on the straightaway. It's more of a driver development program, an education program to teach you how to drive on a track and how to performance drive at very high speeds, 100 plus miles an hour easily. Even in some of the most bone stock cars, you're going to be doing over 100 miles an hour depending on the track. Now, when I did that my second time, they usually do 20-minute sessions where you're on track nonstop for 20 minutes doing laps. And I was about halfway through my first session, and my instructor that was sitting in the car with me, he just looks over and he's like, you've been doing this for a long time? And I was like, no, this is my second track day ever. You're learning this track really fast. And I attribute that to autocross, because you have a small track, a small course with a lot of action going on, and you have to pick the fastest way through it, and you only have a limited number of passes to get it right. So you really have to pay attention when you're autocrossing to learn that line, which is what we call the fastest route around a track or through an autocross course. That line, it's not always the sharpest corners. Sometimes you have to go really wide. Sometimes you have to go slower through one corner so you're lined up better for the next corner, or you're setting yourself up for the longer straightaways so you get the most speed out of that. And that's something that you develop over time, and there are definitely plenty of books out there if you're interested in reading those. I did promise you listeners that I would be putting a list of books up that I recommend on my social media pages. I have not done that yet. That will happen this week, though.
Okay. Well, while we're talking social media, why don't you throw those social media pages out there?
So, yeah, I'm on Facebook.com/RagsToRaces. On Twitter, I'm at RagsToRaces. And Instagram, because somehow somebody else got Rags to Races, so I'm at Rags2Races.
I hate when that happens, man. My last podcast, the guy on Twitter had taken the name of the show that I had that was Off Center Radio, and he had made one tweet 4 years ago. So I had to call it something different.
Oh, go figure.
Yeah. Damn social media. Now, these, what were they called again? These races in the parking lot?
That's called autocross.
Autocross.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do people compete for prizes and anything in that, or is this something that more people do more to get familiar with the racing lifestyle, or just for fun, or?
A lot of it's fun and bragging rights. When you start stepping up to major sanctioning bodies like the Sports Car Club of America, and you go on there, you do start doing their national level events. The big thing is you get a jacket, and that's when you see someone wearing a national championship jacket, they won the championship in their class, and that's somebody you definitely want to talk to and get to know. But in autocross, if you are running at the national level, there is contingency money, and what that is, like if you think of a NASCAR. You've got all these little tiny stickers on the back of the car. You ever notice that? And, for like different auto parts or oil companies or tire companies, stuff like that. And what it is you put those stickers on your car and you use those parts. And if you win a race, they'll give you money. It's not sponsorship per se, but if you prove you use their parts and you win a race, like a national level race, they're going to give you money for basically for thanking them for advertising and sort of as a little prize and a thank you for using their parts and promoting their parts. So there is some contingency you can get in autocross, and right now I only know of one place that does sponsorships for autocross, and it's a website, racershq.com, and he actually does offer a couple of sponsorships to people throughout the country for autocrossing. Just cash money in hand just to promote his brand and to go autocrossing and do what you love. For the most part, sponsorship and prize money when it comes to autocross, not so much. It's more of a fun thing. It's more of a bragging rights thing. And just sort of a collective of like-minded people going out and having fun.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. While the idea of winning a prize for something does give you a different feeling, but also that feeling of everybody just being there because they want to be there, and it's something that they enjoy doing is definitely something that there's always a good vibe around. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I mean, it's I said this in my first episode, and you're going to hear me say it over and over and over again. There are no strangers in motorsports. There's only friends you haven't met. And every time I go to any kind of event, whether it be an autocross, a track day, if I go, work on the race car I work on, there's always people there that are willing to help, willing to stand out, willing to give pointers, willing to, take that extra step. And end of the day, you're having a beer with them, even though you guys may have been battling it out on the track 2 hours before. You're hanging out and you're best of friends afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the competition stays on the track. No big rivalries or
absolutely
no WWE conversations before the race.
Now, when it comes to road racing, that's pretty much the case. However, I've been to some circle track stuff where I've seen some fights break out. Doesn't happen very often, but it does occasionally. Somebody does something stupid, and you got all that testosterone pumping, and next thing you know, you got two guys taking their helmets off and throwing punches. And I can't really condone that. I don't think that's very sportsmanlike. Stuff happens. This is racing. It's dangerous. There's going to be contact. And, also on that same level, if you're purposely running into somebody, then that's not very sportsmanlike either. And you're not only, costing yourself money from the damage to your own vehicle, you could be hurting someone else's vehicle as well and costing them a good chunk of money too.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to learn to control the emotions, but emotions got to be high when you're doing stuff like that.
When the adrenaline starts pumping, you don't necessarily think about it, and sometimes it takes years to figure out how to do that. I mean, I've been, crewing with my one guy that runs the SCCA majors. He does wheel-to-wheel racing. He does a huge semi-pro racing series every year. And there's been plenty of times he's been on the radio where it's, hey, this guy hit me, and get off track. And the guy who hit him is angry, and my driver's angry. And it's just like, hey, hold on, let's take a breath. Let's pull out the tapes and let's see what happened. Because everybody runs in-car cameras in that series. So everyone pulls out their cameras, any cars that may have been around, you're talking with them. And everybody sits down, you watch the videos, you figure out, hey, you know what, I was in the wrong, sorry about that. Mm-hmm. And you move on. Yeah.
Well, little judgment calls when you go on that fast.
Yeah.
It's definitely got to be difficult in the moment to realize exactly what happened.
Exactly. I mean, and I've seen it plenty of times before too, where they break out the tapes and the guy, you realize, you know what, that was totally wrong of me. I should not have done that. Sorry about it. And you move on. You talk it through. You shake hands. You crack a beer and move on with your life.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, man.
Absolutely. So, any other questions you got for me?
Yeah, I certainly can't think of any right this moment.
Okay. So, well, why don't we go ahead and wrap it up then? Brooks, it's a pleasure having you on board, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you. I hope to have you here as often as possible. Be that voice of reason, that voice for every man who may not understand when I start talking about late apexes and trail braking and slip angles and whatnot. So it'll be good to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to working with you. So I guess I will sign off here. Just to let you know, like I said, you can find me on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/ragstoraces. At Rags to Races on Twitter. Instagram is at Rags2races. Looking forward to talking to you again. Keep the shiny side up, the greasy side down, and remember, there are no strangers in motorsport, only friends you haven't met. So there you have it, folks. There we are for episode 2. That's Brooks. Looking forward to working with him, and as I'm getting ready to close out here, I just wanted to send a special thank you out to Ian and Dave at the Team Clear Coat podcast. Guys gave me a little bump on one of their last episodes. I really do appreciate it. And if you're listening to me from them, thank you for listening. And again, thanks to Ian and Dave for the shout out. Do appreciate it. If you can't wait for my next episode, listen into the Untitled Car Show with Ike. This week, I was the guest on the Untitled Car Show. So give it a listen. And if you like what they have to say, subscribe to their podcasts. And please do subscribe, rate, and review me on iTunes if you can. Thank you very much. I hope you have a good week. Keep the shiny side up, the greasy side down. And remember, there are no strangers in motorsport, only friends you haven't met.